Good evening. 3 minutes late is better than nothing. Preface, preference, preference, preface to all of this is that this is for entertainment purposes only. This is my opinion. What I'm reading from is not my uh, own opinion. I'm reading from a uh, document that was, we never know. So, okay. We look like we are having a problem. But are we? No, we're not. Okay, just getting it on the big screen so I could see it. Have the chat up and running. I am not perfect, I am only human. So here we go. We now go on to best effort, which is a continuation of yesterday. Here we go. Ultimately, the left does not believe that all men are created equal. They think they are special. They certainly don't think all people have an unalienable right to pursue the good life. They think only they themselves have such a right, along with a moral responsibility to make decisions for everyone else. They don't think any citizen, state, business, church, or charity should be allowed any freedom until they first bend the knee. This book, this agenda, this entire Project 2025 is a plan to unite the conservative movement and the American people against elite rule and woke culture warriors. Our movement has not been united in recent years, and our country has paid the price. In the past decade, though, the breakdown of the family, the rise of China, the Great Awakening, big tech's abuses, and the erosion of constitutional accountability in Washington have rendered these divisions not just inconvenient but politically suicidal. Every hour, the left directs federal policy and elite institutions. Our sovereignty, our Constitution, our families, and our freedom are a step closer to disappearing. Conservatives have just 2 years and one shot to get this right. With enemies at home and abroad, there is no margin for error. Time is running short. If we fail, the fight for the very idea of America may be lost. But we should take this small window of opportunity we have left to act with courage and confidence, not despair. The last time our nation and movement were so near defeat, we rallied together behind a great leader and great ideas, transcended our differences, rescued our nation, and changed the world. It's time to do it again. Now, as then, we know who we are fighting and what we are fighting for our republic, our freedom, and for each other. The next conservative president will enter office on January 20th, 2025. Side note, this was written last year. With a simple choice, greatness or failure, it will be a daunting test, but no more than every generation of Americans have faced and passed. The conservative promise represents the best effort of the conservative movement in 2023 and the next conservative president's last opportunity to save our republic. Then there are endnotes. Now we're on to section 1. Taking the reins of government. America's bicentennial, which culminated on July 4th, 1976, was a spirited and unifying celebration of our country, its founding, and its ideals. As we approach our nation's 250th anniversary, which will take place during the next presidency, America is now divided between two opposing forces: woke revolutionaries and those who believe in the ideals of the American Revolution. The former belief is that America is, and always has been, systematically racist and that it is not. Were it celebrating, it must be fundamentally transformed, largely through a centralized administrative state. The latter believe in America's history and heroes, its principles and promise, and in everyday Americans and the American way of life. They believe in the Constitution and Republican government. Conservatives, the Americanists in this battle, must fight for the soul of America, which is very much at stake. Just 2 years after the death of the last surviving Constitutional Convention delegate, James Madison, Abraham Lincoln warned the greatest threat to America would not come from without, but from within. Their sentence, not mine. This is evident today, whether it be mask and vaccine mandates, school and business closures, efforts to keep Americans from driving gas cars or using gas stoves, or efforts to defund the police, indoctrinate school children, alter beloved books, abridge free speech, undermine the colorblind ideal, or deny the biological reality that there are only two sexes. The left's steady stream of insanity appears to be never ending. The next administration must stand up for American ideals, American families, and American culture, all things in which thankfully most Americans still believe. Highlighting this need, former director of the Office of Management and Budget, Russ Vought, writes in Chapter 2, the modern conservative president's task is to limit, control, and direct the executive branch on behalf of the American people. At the core of this goal is the work of the White House and the central personnel agencies. Article 2 of the Constitution vests all federal executive power in a president made accountable to the citizenry through regular elections. Our founders wrote, the executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America. Accordingly, Voigt writes, it is the President's agenda that should matter to the department and agencies, not their own. Yet the federal bureaucracy has a mind of its own. Federal employees are often ideological aligned, not with the majority of the American people, but with one another, posing a profound problem for Republican government, a government of, by, and for the people, as Donald Devine, Dennis Kirk, and Paul Dans writes in Chapter 3, an autonomous bureaucracy has neither independent constitutional status nor separate moral legitimacy. Byzantine personnel rules provide the bureaucrats with their chief means of self-protection. What's more, knowledge of such rules is to thwart the president's appointees and agenda. As Devine, Kirk, and Dans writes, managing the immense bureaucracy of the federal government is impossible without an understanding of the key central personnel agencies and their governing laws and regulations. Many of these laws and regulations governing a large, underworked, overcompensated, and unaccountable federal civilian workforce are so irrational that they would be comical in a less important context. This is true whether it comes to evaluating employees' performance or hiring new employees. Only in the federal government could an applicant in the hiring process be sent to the front of the line because of a history of drug addiction or alcoholism, or due to morbid obesity, irritable bowel syndrome, or a psychiatric disorder. The next administration should insist that the federal government's hiring, evaluation, retention, and compensation practices benefit taxpayers rather than benefiting the lowest rung of the federal workforce. In order to carry out the president's desires, political employees must be given tools, knowledge, and support to overcome the federal government's obstructionist human resource departments. More fundamentally, the new administration must fill its ranks with political appointees. Devine, Kirk, and Dans observes that the Trump administration appointed fewer political appointees in its first few months in office than any other recent presidency. This left career employees in charge of many places. This can occur even after departments have been fully staffed with political appointees. Voigt writes that the White House Office of Management and Budget should establish a reputation as the keeper of commander's intent, yet OMB is dominated by career employees who often try to overrule political appointees serving in the various executive departments. Empowering political employees across the administration is crucial to a president's success, explains it. Above all, the president and those who serve under him or her must be committed to the Constitution and the rule of law. This is particularly true of a conservative administration which knows that the president is there to uphold the Constitution, not the other way around. If a conservative administration does not respect the Constitution, no administration will. In Chapter 1, former Deputy Chief of Staff to the President Rick Dearborn writes that the White House counsel must take seriously the duty to protect the powers and privileges of the President from encroachment by Congress, the judiciary, and the administrative components of departments and agencies. Equally important, the President must enforce the Constitution and laws as written, rather than proclaiming new law unilaterally. President should not issue mask or vaccine mandates, arbitrarily transfer student loan debt, or issue monarchical mandates of any sort. Legislators make the laws in a republic, not executives. It is crucial that all three branches of the federal government respect what Madison called the double security to our liberties, the separation of powers among the three branches, and the separation of powers between the federal government and the states. This double security has been greatly compromised over the years. Voigt writes that the modern executive branch writes federal policy, enforces that policy, and often adjudicates whether that policy was properly drafted and enforced. He described this as constitutionally dire and in urgent need of repair, adding nothing less than the survival of self governance in America is at stake. When it comes to ensuring that freedom can flourish, nothing is more important than deconstructing the centralized administrative state. Political appointees who are answerable to the president and have decision making authority in the executive branch are key to this essential task. The next administration must not cede authority to nonpartisan experts who pursue their own ends while engaging in groupthink, insulated from American voters. The following chapters detail how the next administration can be responsive to the American people, not to entrenched elites, and how it can take care that all of the laws are faithfully executed, not merely those that the president desires to see executed, and how it can achieve results and not be stymied by an unelected bureaucracy. 1. White House Office Rick Dearborn. From popular culture to academia, the American presidency has long been a prominent fixture of the national imagination. Naturally so, since it is the beating heart of our nation's power and prestige. It has played, for instance, a feature role in innumerable movies and television shows and has been prodded, analyzed, and critiqued by countless books, essays, and studies. But like nearly everything else in life, there is no substitute for first-hand experience, which this manual has compiled from the experience of presidential appointees and provides an accessible form for future use. With respect to the presidency, it is best to begin with our republic's foundational document. The Constitution gives the executive power to the president. It designates him as commander in chief and gives him the responsibility to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. It further prescribes that the president might seek the assistance of the principal officer in each of the executive departments. Beginning with George Washington, every president has been supported by some form of White House office consisting of direct staff officers as well as a cabinet comprised of departments and agency heads. Since the inaugural administration of the late 18th century, citizens have chosen to devote both their time and their talent to defending and strengthening our nation by serving at the pleasure of the president. Their shared patriotic endeavor has proven to be a noble one, not least because the jobs in what is now known as the White House Office, WHO, are among the most demanding in all of government. The president must rely on the men and women appointed to the WHO. There simply are not enough hours in the day to manage the affairs of state single-handedly, even though he's trying. So delegation is not just advisable, it is essential. The decisions that assistants and senior advisors make will directly impact the administration, its legacy, and most important, the fate of the country. Their agenda must therefore be the president's agenda. Choosing who will carry out that agenda on a daily basis is not only one of the first decisions a president makes in office, but also one of the most critical. The tone and tempo of an administration are often determined on January 20th. Chief of Staff. As with most of the positions that will be covered in the first chapter, the Chief of Staff is also an assistant to the President. However, the Chief is truly first among equals of all presidential staff members. The Chief is the most critical to implementation of the President's vision for the country. The Chief also has a dual role as manager of the staffs of both WHO and the Executive Office of the President. The Chief of Staff's first managerial task is to establish an organizational chart for the WHO. It should be simple and contain clear lines of authority and responsibility to avoid conflicts. It should also identify specific points of contact for each element of the government outside of the White House. These contacts should include the White House liaisons who is selected by the Office of Presidential Personnel, PPO. Receiving guidance from the president, the chief endeavors to implement the president's agenda by setting priorities for the WHO. This process begins by taking stock of the president's campaign promises, identifying current and prospective opportunities, and then delegating policy priorities among the departments and agencies of the cabinet and through the three White House policy councils: the National Economic Council, the Domestic Policy Council, the National Security Council. NEC, DPC, NSC, relatively. The president is briefed on all of his policy priorities by his cabinet and senior staff as directed by the chief. The chief, along with the senior WHO staff, map out the issues and themes that will be covered daily and weekly. The chief then works with the policy councils, the cabinet, and the Office of Communications and Office of Legislative Affairs, OLA, to sequence and execute the rollout of policies and announcements. White House counsel and senior advisors and senior counselors are also intimately involved. All senior staff report to the Chief of Staff, either directly or through his own 2 or 3 deputies, unless the President determines that a particular assistant to the President reports directly to him. Most chiefs have interacted directly with cabinet officers in a select number of direct reports. In most cases, the direct reports to the chief are 2 or 3 deputies, the communications director, PPO director, White House counsel, and senior advisors. Occasionally, the Office of Public Liaison, OPL, the cabinet secretary, and intergovernmental affairs also report directly to the chief. Usually, however, they report instead to a deputy chief of staff. Meetings with senior staff and direction provided to the WHO must all balance with the daily needs of the president. A successful chief steers the West Wing using his management of and influence with the various individuals and entities around him. It goes without saying that selecting the right personnel to be chief is vital. I'm reading the sentences as they are written. Deputy Chiefs of Staff. In recent years, presidents typically have appointed 2 deputy chiefs of staff, a deputy chief of staff for management and operations, and a deputy chief of staff for policy. They also have been other types of deputy chiefs whose roles had included, for example, overseeing strategy, planning, and implementation. Chiefs of staff have then occasionally appointed a principal deputy chief to be in charge of guiding decision-making, organizational structure, and information flow. Principal Deputy Chiefs of Staff. Not all chiefs of staff have tapped a principal deputy. A major reason is that doing so adds another layer of command complexity. When principal deputies have been installed, their roles have varied based on the needs of particular chiefs. Most principal deputies have functioned as doorkeepers, sorting through action items, taking on those that can be handled at their own level, and passing up others that truly require the attention of the chief of staff or the president. Principal deputies also have assumed control of the scheduling functionings normally under the operations deputy and have worked directly with the policy councils at the direction of the Chief of Staff, the OPL, and Office of Political Affairs, OPA, also have reported to a principal deputy. Deputy Chiefs of Staffs for Management and Operations. The Deputy Chief of Staff for Management and Operations oversees the President's schedule and all logistical aspects of his movement within and outside of the White House. For example, both air travel on Air Force One and Marine One and ground transportation. This deputy also interfaces directly with the Secret Service as well as the military offices tasked with keeping the president and his family safe. In the past, this deputy has also worked with the NSC, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, and the intelligence community, and on advancing all foreign trips. If their roles are separated from that of policy deputy, the deputy should have a strong grasp of international affairs and robust foreign policy credentials. This deputy further manages all facets of the working White House: technology, grounds management, support staff, personnel administration, and communications. This individual therefore needs to be meticulous and ideally should possess a great deal of command and control experience. Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy in some administrations, the function of the IGA, OPA, and OPL, and other advisors within the WHO have fallen under the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. For conservatives, this arrangement could help to connect the WHO's outreach to political and external groups and be a strong conduit for state and local elected officials, state party organizations, and both top and grassroots groups. The deputy chief works directly with the chief of staff, cabinet officers, and all three policy councils to support the development and implementation of the president's agenda. This deputy chief should therefore have impressive policy credentials in the realms of economic, domestic, and social affairs. Senior advisors. Presidents have surrounded themselves with senior advisors whose experience and interests are not necessarily neatly defined. In recent administrations, senior advisors have been appointed to offer broad guidance on political matters and communications issues. Others have acted as czars for specific projects or policy areas. The most powerful senior advisors frequently have a long personal relationship with the president and often have spent a significant amount of time with him within and outside of the White House. They have been asked not only to provide guidance on a variety of policy issues, but also to offer instruction on communicating with the American people and the media. In a number of administrations, new offices or councils have been created to support senior advisors. For the most part, their functions have been duplicative or overlapping, as a result of which these offices have tended to be short-lived. Even so, senior advisors should be provided the staff and resources that their portfolios require. To ensure that senior advisors are effective, their portfolio must be clearly delineated and clearly communicated across the White House. This, too, is a responsibility of the Chief of Staff. Office of White House Counsel. The Office of White House Counsel provides legal guidance to the President and elements of the EOP on a host of issues, including presidential powers and privileges, ethics compliance, review of clemency applications, and judicial nominations. The selection of the White House counsel is one of the most important decisions an incoming president will make. The office is not designed to create or advance policies on its own initiative, nor should it do so. Rather, it is dedicated to guiding the president and his reports on how, within the bounds of law, to pursue and realize the president's agenda. White House counsel does not serve as the president's personal attorney in non-official matters. It is almost impossible to delineate exactly where an issue is strictly personal and has no bearing on the president's official function. The White House counsel needs to deeply be committed both to the president's agenda and to affording the president proactive counsel and zealous representation. That individual directly advises the president as he performs the duties of the office and this requires a relationship that is built on trust, confidentiality, and candor. The the office The Office of White House Counsel is also responsible for ensuring that each component of the White House adheres to all applicable legal and ethical guidelines, which often requires ongoing training and monitoring to ensure compliance. This means in ensuring that White House staff regularly consult with office attorneys on required financial disclosures, received gifts, potential conflicts of interest, and other ethical concerns. The Office of White House Counsel is the first line of defense for the EOP. Its staff must take seriously the duties to protect the powers and privileges of the President from encroachments by Congress, the judiciary, and the administrative components of departments and agencies. In addition to the White House counsel, the office includes deputies, assistants, associates, and legal support staff. The assistant and associate attorneys are often specialists in particular areas of the law and offer guidance to the EOP on issues related to national security, criminal law, environmental law, and a host of administrative and regulatory matters. Attorneys working in the Office of White House Counsel serve as legal advisors to the White House policy operation by reviewing executive orders, agency regulations, and other policy related functions. Here again, subordinates should be deeply committed to the President's agenda and see their role as helping to accomplish the agenda through problem solving and advocacy. They should not erect roadblocks out of an abundance of caution. Rather, they should offer practical legal advice on how to promote the President's agenda within the bounds of the law. The White House counsel's office cannot serve as a finishing school to credential the next set of white shoe law firm attorneys or federal judges in waiting who cabin their opinions for fear their elite credentials could be tarnished through a policy disagreement. Rather, it should function more as an activist yet ethical plaintiff's firm that advocates for its client the administration's agenda within the limits imposed by the Constitution and the duties of legal profession. The Office of the White House Counsel also serves as a primary gateway for communication between the White House and the Department of Justice. Traditionally, both the White House Counsel and the Attorney General have issued a memo requiring all contact between the two institutions to occur between the Office of White House Counsel and the Attorney General or Deputy Attorney General. The next administration should re-examine this policy and determine whether it might be more efficient or more appropriate for communication to occur through additional channels. White House counsel also works closely with the DOJ Office of Legal Counsel to seek opinions on, for example, matters of policy development and the constitutionality of presidential powers and privileges within the OLA and the DOJ Office of Legal Policy on presidential judicial nominees. When a new president takes office, he will need to decide expeditiously how to handle any major ongoing litigation or other pending legal matters that might present a challenge to his agenda. To offer guidance, the White House counsel must get up to speed as quickly as possible on all significant ongoing legal challenges across the executive branch that might affect the new administration's policy agenda and must be prepared at the outset of the administration to present recommendations to the president, including recommendations for considering or reversing positions of the previous administration in any significant litigation. This review will usually require consulting with the new political leadership at the Justice Department, including during the transition period. No, no day is predictable at the White House. Therefore, to handle the pace and volatility, the pace, excuse me, to handle the pace and volatility of affairs, the Office of White House Counsel must offer measured legal advice in a timely manner. This often means foregoing law review style memos about esoteric legal concepts and instead quickly providing high level yet incisive guidance. Due to evolving world events, domestic affairs, and political pressures, the office often faces legal questions for which there may not be a wealth of precedent. Attorneys in the Office of White House Counsel must therefore work collaboratively within the White House and the Department of Justice, relying on each other as a team to ensure that proper legal guidance is delivered to the president. The president should choose a White House counsel who is well versed in the Constitution, administrative and regulatory law, and the inner workings of Congress and the political process. Instead of choosing a specialist, the president should hire a counsel with extensive experience with a wide range of complex legal subjects. Moreover, while a candidate with elite credentials might seem ideal, the best one will be above all loyal to the president and the Constitution. Staff Secretary. The office of the Staff Secretary is rarely visible to the outside world, but it performs work of tremendous importance. The office is similar to a military commander's adjutant, as it is responsible for fielding and managing a vast amount of information at the top of its organization. This includes information on its way into the Oval Office, as well as information flowing out of the Oval Office. Because of its gatekeeping function, the position of Staff Secretary is one of extreme trust, and the individual who possesses it should be vetted to work as an honest broker in the President's service. The office of the Staff Secretary has been described as the last substantive control point before papers reach the Oval Office. A great deal of information is headed towards the Oval Office at any moment. This includes presidential decision memos, bills passed by Congress, which may be accompanied by signing or veto statements, and briefing books, reading materials, samples of constituent mail, personal mail, and drafts of speeches. The Staff Secretary makes sure that these matters are complete, well ordered, and up to date before they reach the President. This necessarily means that the Staff Secretary plays a key role in determining who weighs in on policy matters and when. As noted above, the Staff Secretary also handles information leaving the Oval Office. The President may have questions after reviewing incoming material, may wish to seek more information, or may demand revisions. The Staff Secretary is often responsible for directing these requests to the appropriate places and following up on them to ensure that they are completed. One of the Staff Secretary's critical functions is managing and overseeing the clearance process for the President's daily nightly briefing book. This book is filled all the reading material and leading documentation the President needs in the morning and evening to help him make decisions. The Staff Secretary also oversees the use of the President's signature, whether by hand or by auto pen, and manages the Office of the Executive Clerk, Office of Records Management, and Office of Presidential Correspondence. Excuse me. Office of Communications. The Office of Communications, which operates under the Director of Communications, conveys the President's agenda to the public through various media, including speeches and remarks, press briefings, off-the-record discussions with reporters, and social media. Depending on how a president chooses to structure his White House, the Office of Communications may include the Office of the Press Secretary, Press Office, but no matter how it is structured, the office must work closely with the press office as well as the president's speechwriters and digital strategists. Operational functions of the Office of Communications include scheduling and running press briefings, interviews, meetings, media appearances, speeches, and a range of other events. The Office of Communications must maintain robust relationships with the White House Press Corps, the White House Correspondents Association, regional stakeholders, and key interest groups. No legal entitlement exists for the provision of permanent space for media on the White House campus, and the next administration should re-examine the balance between media demands and space constraints on the White House premises. Leadership within the Office of Communications should include a communications director who is a direct report to the Chief of Staff, a deputy communications director, a deputy director for strategic communications, and a press secretary. This leadership team must work together closely to drive the national narrative about the White House. The best resources for the Office of Communications is the President. The President conveys the White House's overall message through one or two inaugural addresses, State of the Union addresses, speeches to Congress, and press conferences. The office must also ensure that the various White House offices disseminate a unified message to the public. The communications director and press secretary, in particular, should be careful to avoid contradicting the president or delivering conflicting information. The president's secretary is the president's spokesperson communicating to the American people through the media. The press secretary engages with the White House press corps formally through press briefings and informally through impromptu gaggles and meetings. Individuals who serve in this role must be quick on their feet, which means, when appropriate, deftly refuting and rebutting correspondents' questions and comments. The communications director must convey the president's mission to the American people. Especially for conservatives, this means navigating the mainstream media to ensure that the president's agenda is conveyed effectively and accurately. The communications director must be politically savvy and very aware of the ongoing activities of the other White House offices. The new administration should examine the nature of the relationship between itself and the White House Correspondents Association and consider whether an alternative coordinating body might be more suitable. Office of Legislative Affairs. Created by President Dwight Eisenhower, the OLA has continued to serve as the liaison between the White House and Congress. The White House must work with congressional leaders to ensure presidential nominees for roles such as cabinet secretaries and ambassadors are confirmed by the Senate. The White House also relies on Congress to enact forms promised by the president on the campaign trail, whether those promises relate to health care, education, or national defense. Because Congress holds the power of the purse, White House staffers must ensure that there is enough support on the Hill to secure the necessary funding through the appropriations process to fulfill the president's agenda. The OLA reports directly to the Chief of Staff, and in some administrations has done so under the guidance of a Deputy Chief of Staff, usually the Deputy Chief for Policy. Regardless of the persons to whom the OLA reports, however, the office exercises a certain autonomy on behalf of the President and the Chief of Staff in directing influencing congressional leaders of both major political parties. The OLA often must function as the mediator among the parties and find common ground to facilitate the successful enactment of the president's agenda. As is the case with many White House offices, but especially the Office of Communications, the OLA must ensure that congressional leaders receive one unified message. If other actors within the White House maintain their own relationships with congressional leaders and staffers, it may appear that the president's agenda is fractured and lacks consensus. This dynamic has caused real problems for many presidents in the past. Internally, OLA staffers need to be involved in policy discussions, budget reviews, and other important meetings. They must also provide advice to policy staffers regarding whether certain ideas are politically feasible. Externally, OLA staffers have to communicate continuously with congressional offices of both parties in both the House and the Senate to ensure that the president has enough support to enact his legislative priorities or sustain votes. The OLA hold on. The OLA requires staffers who are effective communicators and can provide a dose of reality to other White House staffers when necessary. Although a policy proposal within the White House may be a great idea, OLA staffers must ensure that it is politically feasible. OLA staffers must therefore be skilled in both politics and policy. Furthermore, the president should seek out individuals who can advance his agenda and at the same time forge pathways with members of the opposing political party on other priorities. Most importantly, OLA must function as a well-oiled machine, precisely synced. The president cannot afford to have a tennis player on, much less as the leader of his football team. Okay, that's it. We will start tomorrow with Office of the Presidential Personnel. I have to highlight these things. Oh, that's amazing, isn't it? So, guys, what do we think today? Interesting, huh? Learning government class because of this, that's for sure. You can stop, turn it off if you don't want to hear the discussion after this, but it will be happening every night if I can help it. And big giant head, stop, keep it up. I love that. Where are we going to eat after church? That reminds me of back when I was a kid. All I was thinking about was a local pancake place. It had a very disgusting name, and I can't call it that. It's now what Denny's is. So, oh, AOLA staffer. If it's going to put the abbreviations, I can't fight it because when I read out loud, I'm getting slightly better every day. I do not read. Um, I have to go back and autocorrect some things because the grammar is atrocious or it's spelled wrong. I'm going to have to learn how to autocorrect in my head while I'm reading. This is not going to be fun. Oh, I don't know. I heard Denny's isn't serving Portuguese homos out. I could eat in the car. Oh, the blank outfit to read in also. I can't change my hair, sorry. And the makeup is just my makeup. We all know that who is she? The cosplaying chick, the Secretary of Homeland Affairs? No, I can't remember her name, but she wears, I am going to female shame my own people. That is way too much makeup. My God, even lashes. Wow. Um, as it is, this government doesn't take women seriously. So with that much makeup on, you can just see them go off in their head. So, I am not necessarily female shaming. I'm makeup shaming. And the cosplaying. Today she had a hat on, cowboy hat on. It looks like something out of Urban Cowboy. Sorry. Is that a green screen? No, it isn't. It is just I do this through Prism and it's just the thing they throw up there. That's why sometimes it flickers. I forget. I guess it's learning. It's probably got an AI in it. It's learning to not flicker as much because I'm rocking back and forth. Yesterday, I know it was flickering a ton because the other person said that you could see one of the things in the background flicker on and off. So it's a filter. Yes. So that is hard. I have noticed because I'm watching the screen, I am usually crapping out at about 32 minutes. And weirdly enough, it's when I seem to get better at reading it because I think I want it done. Um, what do you guys all think of the stuff that's been going on today? Hmm? Have you seen the Politics Girl showed about news in small doses? Yes, I know. I've been told by a myriad of people to take my news in small doses, but I've never been able to. I try, and then I get stuck in something completely weird that if he comes downstairs and looks and he's just like, he'll shake his head and go back up. But we also need to not take it in small doses right now. We need to be really doing things out there, not just sitting at home wondering what we can do. That's the scary part. And I've seen people fighting about um was it not flyover country being the next prez? It wouldn't be outrageous. Oh, that's the thing. So, and yes, I know I'm supposed to take news in small doses, but you can't right now. And considering the other thing that I do, I don't have time to take things in small doses. At least I'm getting my lighting better so I don't look my age anymore. This is not a filter, this is really me. So it just all depends on lighting because the orange balloon has aged me easily 10 years in the past 8 months. I'm not amused. Uh, didn't think I possessed vanity until I started looking my age. So, what did I watch today? Well, I watched she's providing a resource to keep up without being overwhelmed. Everything is overwhelming though, that's the problem. Especially when you turn it on and find out that certain parts are going to be the new Riviera and we're going to send prisoners to another country that there are movies about. um, and that we've started our first detention camp. I'm going to call it that too. That's what it is. Sorry. Um, and that they keep rounding up our own people that are belong to our states. Uh, and I wonder what they're going to do with my people, when he comes around and signs something that says my land doesn't exist anymore, and that I'm not a citizen. Read that one. That one's crazy. Um, I know it was just an option. Can't you tell I've been told that before? And when your own doctor says to knock it off, you can't help it. But that was 2 years ago. That wasn't last time I saw her. So, um, and if I was anybody I know who might have to worry about healthcare, get your prescriptions up to date and get as much of your supply as you can if you know you're going to be doing it for a long time. Accelerationism. There are some of those words that are just like you can tell when the beginning forward guys were starting to, when they handed it off to regular people because it got easier to read, because the 5 syllable words were disappearing finally and the mishmash of what it is like reading some modern version of gobbledygook. So I was going to say something else, but I would not give it that kind of credit. Um, yeah, for some reason I kept wanting to say certain words would pop out, I think, in my head first. I can't I think one was detail, but I wanted to say derail or something like that. I got to keep those ideas out of my head on a regular basis. Oh, hi dear. I'm on 48. So we stopped at 40. It was really hard to make it to 40, but I will every day. But that includes the disclaimer I put at the beginning of all this. And I need to look up, a certain someone had a disclaimer in his box that works really well for this box for now. So, no, I was talking about the word salad. If you look in the live text earlier, I can't remember. I missed that one big giant head, the Hellraiser cube. It is. Yes, I wish I could call it that because it really is. Um, and yeah, the auto pen, which made me wonder, it's a stamp. I remember them talking about that years ago, the auto pen. But couldn't you just picture this big old Sharpie on like a rudimentary like arm trying to do a signature? Yeah, their stamp is a fancy name, or the auto pen is a fancy name. No, I'm calling it auto. The auto pen is a fancy name for a stamp. But yeah, all of these when they're saying they need the experience, you see me shaking my head. It's like, no, that person doesn't have it. Um, at least what Saunders at least knew what she was sort of talking about. Okay. This press secretary, I wish I would have even taken instead of what Secretary of Defense or whatever he is. I'd have taken him as a press secretary. Um, or let me say, I wish he had the experience or the knowledge of him. I know, knowledge of him to do it. She seems to be left out there without a raft a lot, and I don't think that's fair. As a human, yes, that's the thing too, is that we care more about humans. I like the things that sneak in when I move my arms. Oh, yes, I'm not going to repeat that, but yes. So now you guys just want to hear me laugh. And I completely lost my train of thought. I'm a middle-aged woman in the Gen X, so if you want to pick on me, those who watch later, about me losing my train of thought, me mispronouncing words, so on and so forth, I shouldn't be having to do this right now. This should all be fixed. So if you guys want to get on me about age, brain, whatever, go at it. It doesn't bother me. I just lifted my hands up. I wanted to see if it was going to show the sides again. I know, I'm sorry. Next time I'll send the light first and then the train. Should maybe we should hide the live chat and let them think what I'm laughing at since I'm not doing this for necessarily an all-encompassing audience. So, what did you guys think? Seriously, what did you think? Anything? I read the one earlier. I used to read to kids in elementary school, and I read to my blind friend in junior high school. So, um, and if I remember right, they used to have me read things in like social studies or something because 3 years, 3 days a week, 3 school years, 3 days a week of speech therapy, even if it was in an inner urban school, taught me how to speak really well. I know. I was getting annoyed at myself because I was tumbling over a lot of the words today. But every time I'd get a cadence going, one of the sentences would be wrong. It's like, I may not know my grammar anymore because of age, but holy hell, when I read it, I know it. That's the hard part. And it's like is it the face means this doesn't sound right. And I am tripping over this. So it's like, let's see, what are the problems now? When they change authors, uh, I actually found it easier going from 5 syllables to 4 syllables and a lot of gobbledygook. At least this guy has some kind of reference to what he's talking about, not been in a think tank all of his life. Um, when the sentence structuring is wrong, I'm going to trip. Uh, when the word seems really weird, there have been some extremely weird words that looked like they were trying to make new words out of a word. Um, that's when I have issues too. It's only the fourth time. It will get better. It will get better. Um, that's all I can do actually is just make it better. Um, there isn't anything else to really be thinking of, but I need to put some hours into Ultiva right now. I just want to stay till an hour's up. So, choo choo. Every time somebody talks about their train coming, I think of the show that I like to watch when they're doing the pictograph, I think it is. Um, Once read a book with a client, and neither one of us was perfect, but still, having someone read to me is a good feeling. Thank you. I'll get better at it. I've done it. I used to do it as a child and a teenager all the time. They did have me read things because I sounded uh, the most clear, believe it or not, but that was also 40 years ago. I guess you could say I'm carrying my childhood trauma with me. I don't know, but it will get better. Unfortunately, my regular voice will get better too, and then it won't be as much fun. But but tomorrow I'll be you know where, so it'll be a lot more fun. That is if the rain stops, because it got really ugly out there today, and they were talking about local flooding. There's a place on the way to where I'm going, or actually on the way where I come back, that was pretty much an open manhole for about 6 months, and they finally filled it for it to rain. And yes, the watch went off, and it's probably going off to tell me to drink water. No, it's telling me that I haven't moved around enough. Ah. So, yes, if I'm just going to keep pushing at it and just keep doing it no matter how much I don't want to do it, and maybe even the days that I don't want to do it, I'll read better. I think I also want to change the type here because the type is not conducive to me reading well either. So I might change the type um, in this PDF so I can read it more cohesively. So, because it's the Times New Roman and that's all curly Q stuff that drives me nuts. Um, so I like my world in Arial. You can tell once I was an assistant, can't you? Oh, okay. Let's see. I don't know. Was it the woke nation, wokeness? What's that word? Wokeability. One of their made up words. It's like, we're taking it back, right? Woke is not a bad word. You guys make it a bad word because that means that women aren't doing what you want them to. We are trying to be equal. Let's see, people of all races are trying to be equal. There were a few congressmen telling people what they should not be promoting. Um, you know, I'm going to try it then. My chat is in Arial. I don't like the curly cues in my documents. That has always been a problem with books, believe it or not. Reading as a child, reading as an adult. I hate the curly cues. Um, and now I can change the font on my on computers. So, of course not. Of course you weren't. I'm just hoping that if you did, you go back to where you think you fell asleep and listen, because it is teaching uh like the intricacies of below the deputy or below the secretary, below that, below that. It's like I knew about like deputies, but then I didn't know how long. I thought the pecking order below that was just aides, volunteers, those people, and finding out these are really uh, paid offices, which you can keep all of those, but you can't help poor and indigent. That's bad. Or, you know, keep diseases from coming into the United States because they're not going to be taken care of in other parts of the world. That's okay. Um, us getting out of the World Health Organization, that's a winner. Hmm. Okay, my hour is up. I've done my damage for today. I will see you guys tomorrow a little bit later because I'm going to go watch one of my favorite programs before I come and do this. So I will see you all tomorrow. Same channel. Hopefully more people will see this.